Hey Mario,
Hello. Hi,
good evening.
Pedro. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Okay, now,
Now?
well, today I have an injection in my eye, so,
I that couldn't have been fun.
well, it's every 2 months.
Oh, I see. Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
very
Well,
good. But
all right, you don't look worse for wear. That's the only thing I can say.
thank you.
Baruch Hashem.
Senor Abe,
Yeah. Oh my. Eh.
Sure you didn't realize this morning when you made it.
Hello?
Hi, everybody.
Hi, good evening.
Hello?
Okay, volume 21.
Mhm.
Did you give me that? What problem with mine here?
What's wrong with yours?
Good, it's not. Take a look. Go get it. Go get the other. Go get another one. There. Take a look.
Well, it starts at page 45.
Mhm.
Does everybody start at 45?
No. Okay. We are on page 23. Halachos of constructing an ohel, which is part of the malach of binyan. Right? In the first 5 shirim of this volume, we will learn about malachot, creative labors relevant to many common activities on Shabbat that have not yet been addressed in detail. These include building, boneh, as it pertains to an ohel, like a tent, a canopy, or a horizontal hanging. An ohel is not only a flat hanging, it refers to a covering Sharad, I'm teaching now. Let me call you back, okay? Thank you. Thank God this works. By contrast, the category of ohel does not include a typical wall hanging or other item which hangs only vertically. So, boneh, malabain, laundering, several pairs of malachos tofer, which is sewing and attaching, korea, tearing and detaching, kosher, tying, matir, untying, kosev, writing, mochek, erasing. We have learned in previous volumes about a number of cases in which there is a concern for the malach of boneh. See volume 19, Shir 5, where we discuss binyan bekalim, bone as it may apply to vessels, in the context of opening food packages and containers on Shabbat. See also volume 9, Shir 7, where we mention bone in the context of smoothing out a dirt surface on Shabbos. Volume 20, Shir 2, where we discuss whether boneh applies to braiding hair on Shabbos. In truth, there are many additional practical cases of boneh that are beyond the scope of the shir. Most relate to the rule that tightly fitting 2 parts of an item together, which is tokeya, constitutes boneh. That's a Gemara in Shabbos 45a, brought down the Shulchan Aruch 313. Therefore, returning furniture parts that fell out, replacing a lens and glasses, replacing a doorknob that fell, fixing a clogged toilet, and the like, may all constitute the malach of boneh. And they refer us to the 39 malachas, the Shabbos home, Pnei halacha. In this year that we're going to learn tonight, I'm back to the text. We will focus on the rules of building as it pertains to constructing an ohel, one of the toladot of the malach of boneh. Ohel will define as a halachic canopy. As we will see, the halachic parameters of an ohel are complex, depend on a number of factors. It may encompass many cases of constructing a canopy, as well as certain instances of constructing a vertical hanging. The Gemara Masechta Shabbos writes, this Kuf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, writes that one who constructs a permanent canopy on Shabbos is liable to bring a chatas. Ole keva lo yasa. A person should not build a permanent canopy. V'masa chayv chatas. The Rambam explains that constructing a canopy is considered a tolda of the malach of boneh. The Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos says, ha'ose ohel kavua, if you make a permanent canopy, hareze toldos boneh It's a told of Boneh and Yerchai. Although we might have thought that questions related to constructing an Ohel do not arise frequently on Shabbat, we will see in the remainder of this year that many different, even simple items might be classified as an Ohel. Accordingly, it's necessary to address the status of many cases vis-a-vis building an Ohel. Let us begin by understanding the fundamental principles of the prohibition. What constitutes a canopy? And what are the conditions for constructing a canopy that would render the act forbidden on Shabbos? According to the Gemara, any canopy larger than an area of at least 1 tefach by 1 tefach qualifies as an Ohel. And extending a canopy over such a space is forbidden. Amar Shmuel Shmuel Abchia, Kilas Chasanim, a canopy that a chasan would use, muter lintoso muter leporka. Now, it had no roof. It was just sloped. You can spread it and dismantle it on Shabbos. Amar Rav Sheshus, Brei Davidi lo amarn ela she'ein begaga tefach. It's as long as there wasn't a flat part of at least a tefach. That means if it's completely diagonal to a wall, let's say, so that would not be a problem. But if it was diagonal and then you flatten it out as a tefach, aval yesh begaga tefach asura. V'chiein begaga tefach, even if there's not a tefach, nami lo amarn ela she'ein bepachos mishloisha samuch begaga tefach. That means even when there isn't a flat area of a tefach, it's only permitted where there is not that tefach within 3 tefachim of a roof. Aval yesh bepachos mishloisha samuch legaga tefach asur. If you have the width of a tefach within 3 tefachim of a roof, it's asur. Lo amar ela she'ein b'shipuas tefach. The incline diagonal has to be less than a tefach. Aval yesh b'shipuas tefach shipur olim kolim damu. There he said, the Gemara seems to say that even if it's inclined and it's greater than length in the tefach, it's considered a Ohel. The sentence in parentheses above appears in our printed version of the Gemara, but Tosfos finds it difficult to explain. Some explain that one may construct a tent that is a tefach wide, but less than 10 tefachim tall, on the assumption that it is not large enough to be considered a canopy. This is based on a similar halacha, according to which it is permitted to remain underneath a canopy that is less than 10 tefachim tall, set up inside a sukkah, since the canopy is not tall enough to be considered a formal tent. And therefore, it's not an independent structure where if you sat in it, it would be a problem sitting in the sukkah. However, Tosfos, citing the Ri, argues that although it is true that regard to the halachot of a sukkah, one may sit underneath such a canopy, you can't construct such a canopy on Shabbos. Yesh mefarshim shem shavua tefach begova yud. That if you don't have the diagonal of a tefach within a 10 tefachim length, it's not a problem. The chshiyetze hashipur tefach en mishum ad lamata gova yud. The point, to mean that from the point where the incline has the width of a handbreadth, it is not the height of 10 handbreadths from there to the bottom. Kidashkan beper kama de sukkah, the bekila. Kihach muter lishan besukkah. In such a way, you could sleep in under a canopy. Muter lishan bekilas chasayim alfi sheyesh legag lusheni yud tefachim. As long as it's not as tall as 10 tefachim. Veinir lerida vaday nehi de gabi sukkah lechashiv ohel. It might not be considered an Ohel regarding being in a sukkah, but Mila Gabi Shabbos, Chashiv Asiri. The Bir Halacha explains.
I just want to ask you a question as far as the chuppah goes. What happens if it's concave? It's not and there's no flat surface on it.
What do you mean?
Okay. In other words, you take a talus, and
Oh, and there's a like
talus,
dip.
there's a dip. There's no flat surface. You can't put anything in it. It won't stay. Is that considered not an oil?
Right now it says if you have at least if that talus has at least a tefach where it's flat, and even when what you're describing, part of that talus will be a flat as a tefach. So then it's going to be
I'm not sure. You can, if you let it hang, you can have it without a tefach in it. Okay, I hear what you're saying.
But maybe if it's curved, it's not. Right now,
It seems like a flat surface.
It's got to be flat.
Yeah, it seems like a flat surface is the problem, not the hang. Yeah, and you.
So maybe if it's curved, it would not be a problem. We haven't seen anything
Okay.
say that yet.
Just the kasha.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
The wall must reach a minimum height of 10 tefachim above the ground. The bottom of the wall must extend to within 3 tefachim from the ground. The Bir Halacha explains that even though a mechitza, a halachic wall, must normally be at least 10 tefachim high, in the context of Hilchos Shabbos, even a height of 1 tefach is sufficient to forbid building a canopy on top. V'nei Torah Shabbos kosav zel shono. V'mechitza tzrichos shiur gavan yud tefachim. The walls have to be 10, o zainu mashu, or 7 and a little bit. Upachos megimel tefachim in ours has to be within 3 tefachim of the ground. Ad kan l'shono. V'emeth lo niskar sham b'Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef didn't mention it. So the Chafetz Chaim lanias daiti borer. The sakin amihirus pleitos lator Shabbos. He was like hurry in his opinion. The after ba'amar shem chitza kishgavo yud. Even though normally we call him a chitza, it's got to be 10 tvachim achlin in isura. When it comes to building a tent, it doesn't have to be 10 tvachim high. The kivun sheyesh al zeh shum tmuna mishnei tfanos ktanos. Even if you have, let's say, 2 small walls, v'gagalei milmana also chazal. As long as it has a roof, even if the walls are small, the chazal prohibited. Even with very small walls, if the walls are even a tefach, asru chachamim b'zeh. So we see above that according to the Torah, only constructing a permanent tent or structure with walls and a roof is forbidden. Chazal decreed that it's also forbidden to erect a temporary canopy on Shabbos. The Gemara in Masechta Shabbos states that Amoraim disagree whether it is permissible to add to a previously constructed temporary ohel. On Rav Rachana Rav Yechta, Hakol Moedim she'en oisen ohel aroy b'tchila b'yontiv. You don't start building a temporary ohel on Yontiv. Vein tzarich lomer b'Shabbos, certainly not on Shabbos. Lo nechleku elo hoisif. We're talking about there is a temporary ohel. You're adding to it. Sh'oliezer omer ein moisifin b'Yontiv. Vein tzarich lomer b'Shabbos. You can't add on Yontif, and you certainly can't add on Shabbos. You can even add to a temporary ohel on Shabbos. Certainly on Yontif. So, in accordance with the majority position of the rabbis, the halacha is that one may not construct a tent or other temporary structure from the start, where one did not exist before, but it's permitted to add to an existing canopy. The Gemara elaborates further on the terms by which it is permitted to add to an existing canopy. Masechta Eruvin. Shalach le'Rav Bar Yecheskel Rav Amram. Name alan mar. Tell us one of these ma'alin mili ma'ayos da armit lamishmeid Ravasim b'kipi da arba. Give us some nice halachos that you said in the name of Ravasi regarding they had these like arches on a boat, and there were mats draped over them. These mats that are hanging over the arch on a boat. If it's tefach wide, Even if they're not a tefach wide, but there's less than 3 tefachim between them, l'machar maybe machatzelas uporcelain. You can come on Shabbos and spread it over these arches. My timer, moisif alol aroyu. You're adding to a temporary oil. For shapir dami, that's permitted. Hanu dichri. There were these rams, Davalel Ravuna, that Ravuna owned. Dibimama bo tulo v'layla bo avira. They needed to be in the shade during the day, but they needed fresh air at night. Also, Kamei Rav. Amalei zilkroch budayu. Go roll up these mats, which were spread out for shade. V'shayir bo tefach. But you can leave one tefach covered. The machar pashta, but then tomorrow, which is Shabbos, you can unroll it because you can add, you could be moisif to a temporary oil. So you can see the pictures of the boat with these arches. Each of the arches is a tefach wide. The wooden arches that are to the right are less than a tefach, but they're within 3 tefachim of the other. In either case, you can drape a mat over them. In both cases of the Gemara, a temporary structure of at least a tefach was already in place before Shabbos, right? The arches in the first case, the mats in the second. Extending the structure on Shabbos was permitted. The Shulchan Aruch codifies this principle as halacha in the source below concerning mats spread over a boat, which the Mishnah Berurah explains further using the ideas discussed above. Eitzim shetoikin roshana echad b'doif nasfina. You have a wooden piece that's banged into one wall of the ship. The koifefin roshan, you bend the wooden beam, masheni b'doif nasheni shosfina, and then it gets put in. So you make an arch because you put it into the wall of the boat on the other side. And you drape a mat over it for shade. If prior to Shabbos you had put these arches, and the arches were a tefach width, even if they're less than a tefach, but they're less than 3 tefachim away from each other, chashivi ka'oil, they are already viewed as an oil, and therefore you're allowed to add to it on Shabbos. Mutu lifros aleim b'Shabbos machzelas. Davile tosefes oil aroy. It's like adding a temporary oil, v'shari, and it's permitted. Adds the Mishnah Berurah. Oshev koil mutter. The davka lasos oil aroy metchilo asur. Building some kind of temporary canopy, you can't do it on Shabbos. Aval nasa kvar. If it had been made already, but before Shabbos, mutter lo hosif alav, you can add to it. Since in one case the arch was a tefach wide, that's the oil. Who's sheer oil? O sheer pochos megimel. Can you plug in my phone upstairs? Not plug in. Just can you make sure it's on the? It needs to be charging. It looks like it died. Because we use lavud. Remember, lavud is if something is 3 tefachim by a sukkah. If you have your walls going up to the schach, but it's less than 3 tefachim, we say lavud. Lavud might be a different terminology. Lavud, I think, is to the bottom, right? Gedim boikim boy. Your wall has to be within 3 tefachim of the ground. We use lavud there. And the same thing next to a wall. So these arches that are within 3 tefachim using lavud is considered already a temporary oil, right? Hushi or lavud. We view it as if it was all connected together. Choshev Nas Ohel Mikvar, it was considered a tent already on Friday. So when you added the mats, you're adding to the tent. Based on these guidelines that we have seen, it would be forbidden to spread a blanket or other material as a ceiling or canopy if one wishes to sit underneath it when there was nothing there to start with. Because there you're creating a de novo ohel. The Hilchos Shabbos writes that one should be particularly careful to ensure that children who have reached the age of chinuch, for discussion regarding this age at which children must be taught not to desecrate Shabbos or violate other prohibitions, see volumes. No, I wanted you to leave.
It's because your Dexcom keeps on sending you a message because you're too far away from your.
Oh, I don't want that. I don't care about that. Okay.
It keeps on beeping. Your Dexcom.
So, children like to build tents. So you have to warn the children once they reach the age of chinuch. You're talking about 6, 7, 8. I mean, I don't remember what we said in Shir 6, but that's usually the accepted age. When, if you tell a child of that age, they're aware of what Shabbos is and to stay away from Shabbos, that's the age of chinuch.
If you start your tent before Shabbos.
You're talking about for the children building a tent?
Yeah.
Well, but so then you can add to it.
Right.
Okay, but you can't build it from scratch on
Right,
Shabbos. So ילדים שהגיעו לחינוך, יש להזהיר שלא לפרוס סמיך וקוץ על מנת להיסוסף תחתיה. They shouldn't build a tent between like a one sofa and the other sofa. משום שיש בזה איסור עשיית אוהל. Even though there's no wall. Not only that, there's another law of tearing it down when you're through playing with it. That's soiser. So Yiladim Shigiu Lechinuch, Hamisachakim Ba'avnei Misrach. What if they're playing with Lego or building blocks? Avnei Fele. I guess that's Lego in Hebrew. I don't know why it's called Fela. No, the Hebrew word Pele is Lego.
Pella. It sounds like Pella Wonder Blocks. So like Lego's Wonder Blocks.
Wonder
That
blocks
might be-
from Lego blocks.
Okay.
But okay.
Yesh lazirim sholivnos dugmas bayis or kol chalal acher. They shouldn't build a house, or they shouldn't build like an airspace. Sheyesh bo gag v'chalal tefach al tefach. A tefach is like this. I don't know, 4 inches.
Okay, so you can build like a rocket or something.
Tefach al tefach al room tefach. It shouldn't be a tefach by tefach underneath it. Imishtamshim bavirav lanachas chafetzim etzatzum. Let's say they're going to put their dolls or other toys underneath that. That's a problem. Also came, and if they did it already, also lefarik esoilazeh. You're not allowed to break it down.
I don't think any of the Legos, I mean, are just the special big ones, but the regular Lego, I don't think it's bigger than a
Well, it
tefach.
depends on how big you build it. That's what it's saying. You shouldn't build it tefach by a tefach. Ohel mitkabel saviv chishuk matechas, a collapsible tent with metal rings. Asui lemischak, that's used to play. Ein leposchol, so you shouldn't open it or close it on Shabbos. Vein zedom el dinim amuvarn le'el demuter liftoch gagon miskapel. This is not similar to the halachos where we said that you can open a collapsible awning. The muter liftoch gag miskapel. Because this shape is not maintained when it's closed. When you open it, it's considered first making a canopy. This collapsible tent. Although spreading a blanket out on chairs may constitute forming a temporary canopy, the Yalkut Yosef, among others, writes that if a covering is held up by people alone, it's not considered a halachic tent. For this reason, it's permissible to hold up a talit and spread it out over people's heads, as is widely done when concluding and beginning the reading of the Torah and Simchas Torah. The Yalkut Yosef also notes that since the Tal is not held up to provide shade, but rather to honor those called to the Torah, it's not a forbidden canopy. Mashiesh Nagim B'Simchat Torah, Sheporsim Talit, Al Roshei Yeladim Aktanim, that they put a talis by Kol HaNoarim, V'chad Mehem Mevarach V'Kor B'Torah, one of them makes the bracha, Ein Lochush B'zeh, Mishum Asiyas Ohel HaRob. It's not a problem of putting up a temporary tent. You see, Jews, their minhag stays within halachic parameters. Shmir Shabbos Hilchos.
Any Yom Tov has the same dinim of an ohel as Shabbos.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All 39 malachos that apply to Shabbos apply to Yom Tov, except for Bishul, and except for carrying. Every other of malacha is prohibited. But there's many that are permitted. Like you can't shecht on Shabbos, but you can shecht on Yom Tov because it's l'tzorach oichel nefesh. But all the other dinim apply. The Shmir Shabbos Hilchos writes that when you add to a temporary canopy, this should be done beginning from the side that was set up before Shabbat. If there was a tent set up already Erev Yom Tov or Erev Shabbos, you can add to it. If you had spread a cover over something at least a tefach, you can add to it and spread it completely. You should start from the side that was already up before Shabbos. Also at sad, you start from the side that there's already an oil tefach there. Shamati Magon Rishon Zaman Oyerbach, Zatzal. The important smicha v'chadoyme. If you spread a cover, davar shugufecha, which is one thing, shapir muter laschel gamin atzad hasheni. He says you could start from either side. Mikivin shakol nasim v'asachas. It's all done at one time. But if you're adding this thing, and then you add another thing, and then another, it's not one thing. We have seen that one may not construct even a temporary canopy that was not built before Shabbos. We will learn in the coming sections that Gemara permits creating such a covering under certain circumstances. In addition, we will see that there may be a distinction between two types of temporary canopies. A temporary canopy in which the space below is used for protection from the sun or rain. A temporary canopy which is produced beneath the surface which is being used, such as a table or a bed, right? Like if you set up a bed or a table, so you're not using the underneath the table or the bed, you're using the top of the table and the top of the bed. So for each of but yet you're creating an ohel underneath it. So that's the distinction that the halacha is going to make. For each of the general terms under which it may be permitted to construct a temporary canopy, we will see that the poskim discuss if these allowances, heterim, apply to both canopies used for the spaces beneath them and canopies used for their surfaces. So let's talk about collapsible items. And then we're going to get to an umbrella. Thank you. The first heter is mentioned in the Gemara Masechta Shabbos in Kuf Lamed Ches. The Gemara addresses whether one may open an assembled implement whose folding canopy can be opened or closed. Oalik kavalo yaseh. You shouldn't build a temporary ohel. You must chayv chatzos. Avalmite v'kise traskel. That's a folding chair. Or asla, which is a collapsible toilet. Mutalin toisan lechatchila. You can open them up lechatchila. Rashi explains. They eat each of the three cases in more detail. The bed refers to a pre-assembled one, which one may complete if it's already upright. A folding chair is a type of seat that folds against a wall when not in use, and unfolds to stand on four legs. Aval mita shalanu. Our bed, says Rashi, hamuchuberes v'omeres, which is connected in standing. Imaisa skufa was upright, or mutal tzida or tilted. Mutal and liyashva, you can tip it so that it'll stand on its 4 feet. Or even though you're making a temporary canopy underneath it, it's permitted. Because the point is for sitting on it, not for going underneath it. And then a kisei traskel, which is a folding chair. Velyonishal or. This was like it was made out of leather. So you folded it. You unfolded it, you leaned it against the wall. You can, when you want to sit on it, you unfolded it, and it's got 4 legs. They don't have a picture of that, but I remember in the Gemara, we had pictures of that. Asla, asu ken kisei traskel. This is like a portable toilet. It's made like a folding chair. Aval or a partial of nakul, but it's got a hole in it for obvious reasons. Mutul toizel chatchila david v'koi. Shulchan Aruch says in halacha, shin tesvav, kisei asui prakim, a folding chair made out of parts. Shrotzim leishev alav poskenosav va'or niftach. You open it up and the leather opens. When you close it, right, the leather folds up. You can open it lechatchila. The Mishnah offers other examples in which the same principle applies, because the item was already prepared for use before Shabbos. You just have to open it. It's already prepared from Erev Shabbos. You just open it so you can sit on it. You can set up a chuppah and take it down. If you have a shelf attached to the wall in the base Knesset where books are placed. A shelf is permitted no matter what. We don't care what's below the shelf. You want to put the books on the shelf. It doesn't have the shame of a temporary ohel. It has no walls. So the Yalkut Yosef permits opening a number of additional contemporary items, including folding chairs and cribs. Mutar liftoch b'Shabbos kisei noach, o mita miskapelet, right, a children's crib. Lul is a crib, a folding bed. Ve'en b'zeh chashash oil. V'chein mutar liftoch sarisa shalat tinoikis, a baby crib. Ulaniach lagabayas a keresh. You know, they have a board on the bottom of it. You could put the board there. You don't use the space underneath the crib. You can close it. There's no problem of soiser, which is breaking down a ohel. The Shmir Shabbos Hilchos also permits the use of folding furniture, as he explains, because these items are one unit that are regularly set up and folded closed. Using them does not constitute building or destroying. Mutar liftoch kisei noach, that's a folding chair. Mita v'shulchanim is folding beds or tables. V'chein lul shel tinokos cribs. Mikiven shregilim bekach, they're regularly opened and closed. Kol hachalakim mechubarim leguachav, they're all parts and they're one unit. You can open them and close them. The same applies to collapsible playpens and cribs. Does the heter to open and close prepared items extend as well to those items that serve as shade or protection? The no debuter writes that it does not. Assembling a ready-made bed or chair is permitted only because it's made for sitting and not for shade. Says the Noda Yehuda. V'vadai kavanat Rashi b'mad because of the lav midi ovid, that when you set up a bed, you're not doing anything. After cause of the hashta ovid oil, even though underneath the bed it's viewed like an oil, mikomokum lav midi ovid. You didn't do it. The ain oil b'mashet tzorich la'avir shetachta. An oil that is prohibited on Shabbos is when you want protection from the environment. A bed or a chair is meant to sit on. The Chazon Ish disagrees. In his view, it's permitted to open even a folding furnishing designed for use as shade or protection. It's like a folding chair. Now, I don't know what the Chazon Ish is talking about yet in terms of what kind of furniture. Because we're going to see there's a problem with an umbrella. So what do you call the things that we have in the back, are those big umbrellas. Yeah, so let's see. I don't know what the Chazon Ish is referring to. The Zemamish din kisei trasko. If you have something, a furnishing designed for shade, but not an umbrella, then makam lachalik bein nasa la'oil lo lasa la'oil. Based on the position of Chazon Ish, the Hilchos Shabbos rules that it's permissible on Shabbos to open a hinged awning or retractable roof if it is designed to open and close regularly. Gagon mechuber b'tzirim. You have this kind of hinged roof, buasui kimindelet, like a door. Muchal sogro, you can open up these awnings on Shabbos. Oil is so it's not oil. If the awning slides along a track that is opened and closed, this is already connected with hinges. It's like opening a door. The tent is there. You're not building the tent. The tent is always there. You're just opening and closing it, like a folding chair. If you have this kind of awning above your sukkah, you can close and reopen. Let's say you want to protect your sukkah. You can open up this awning that extends over your sukkah to protect it. Mutar liftoch schacha hasuya meiriya murkeves lagabi tzirim v'zavis matechas. You can open a covering made from a sheet attached to hinges and metal corners. When it's closed, there's no tent. Since it's attached by hinges, and it's made for opening and closing. It's already made. You're not building the oil on Shabbos. Opening it is not considered making an oil. Gagon shel eglas yelodi. You have a stroller and it has a hood. You can open that up. Which is similar to the covering we just mentioned. Or it's made like a cover attached to the stroller. You normally fold it and open it. Some permit even opening up if it's like an umbrella. Many other poskim take this approach as well, including the Be'er Moshe, Rav Yosef Shalom El Yoshev, Rav Mordechai Willard. I don't know what they're talking about.
Stroller, I'm talking about.
I don't know what, do you know what they're talking about? A stroller with an umbrella?
Is that like balance? Or are they talking
Yeah,
about-
there are strollers that are like they're like an umbrella. We used to have them. They look like an umbrella. You pull it apart, and there's a seat in it. It's called an umbrella stroller. You can Google it probably and find it. Yes, they used
But
to
look at
be
the
quite
picture.
popular.
Look at the picture here.
That's not an umbrella stroller.
Exactly. But I've only seen these. I've never seen an umbrella.
No,
What do
no,
you-
you used
An
to have.
umbrella. You
we used
open
to-
it up. You open it
Yeah.
up, and it's like an umbrella.
No, just.
No. It doesn't. It opens,
One movement.
but there's no cover on top. It's got a seat in it. It opens
Yeah,
with
but
a
that
seat.
doesn't have a cover. That's not that. That's not an OL because it's meant to sit
I'm
on it.
gonna Google it and see what it says. But that's called an umbrella stroller. We used to have it all the time. Yeah, you can Google it and
No, but we're talking about having a stroller hood that opens like an umbrella. Some authorities permit opening a stroller hood made like an umbrella. And I'm saying, I don't know what that looks like. I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about, Yaakov, a stroller that folds.
Choose
Yeah.
umbrellas.
This is not an umbrella stroller. This just has a hood.
Ernie,
All umbrella strollers. Look, they're all umbrella.
Ernie, you have to be born when Yaakov was born to know about an umbrella stroller.
Yeah, they're good.
What do you mean? He had that, what are you talking about? He had that, what was that thing called?
Let's not.
He had a
focus on-
carriage. What was that called?
Yeah, but that's not for the car. All these are umbrella strollers, and that's the picture. It's an umbrella stroller.
But that's not what they're referring to here.
Okay,
They're referring to some kind of hood that opens like an umbrella.
here, this is.
They're not
So
referring.
here, so here I'm looking at one now at Amazon.
Me
It's
too.
called the Jetto Lightweight Stroller. It opens like an umbrella and there's also a hood. It's unusual. Yeah.
Okay. But there's a heter.
Yeah.
In contrast to the Orchos Shabbos,
I sent one to the group.
the Yalkut Yosef takes into account the view that even folding furniture may not be opened when its resulting canopy is used for shade or protection. Accordingly, he rules that lechatchila one should leave a handbreadth of the canopy open before Shabbos. Thus, when one opens it fully on Shabbos, it's considered only adding to a temporary canopy, which is permitted according to all opinions. Rav Moshe also Feinstein takes this approach as well. Says the Yalkut Yosef, Gagon HaMechuber le'eglas Yoladim, the hood of a baby stroller, Shu'u kein schacham nimtechas mikapelas, which is a covering that can be extended and folded. Some say you're permitted to open it to protect the child from sun and rain. Even if it was completely folded, it wasn't open at least a tefach. You can fold it. Vuadin He's saying this is the same heter applies if you had a small umbrella attached to a baby stroller. It would be permitted to open it. And then it says v'tov v'nochon lahachmir. Liftoch zagagon me'erev Shabbos b'shir tefel. He says it's good to be machmir, stringent, to open up this hood by at least a tefach, and then when you open it up further on Shabbos, you're just adding. And don't fold it completely. Now, using an umbrella on Shabbos, based on what we have learned so far, concerning opening a folding chair, what should the halacha be concerning opening and closing an umbrella? Although it would seem that some of the mentioned lenient considerations would apply, as we will see, most poskim agree that opening an umbrella is not allowed on Shabbos. The Notabuter writes that using an umbrella may even constitute malacha midaraisa and render one liable for chatas. As we have already seen in source 19, it maintains that opening a covering made for shade is prohibited, even if it's already made. What's more, he argues that it is forbidden to use an umbrella on Shabbos, even if it was open before Shabbos, due to Marasayan. That means, let's say you opened up the umbrella before Shabbos. You can't go out with the umbrella. But if that's a gzeira of a Marasayan, people think you opened it. Occasionally, poskim forbade certain acts, not because they were intrinsically prohibited, but because they appeared to be problematic. This concept is known as Marasayan, has been variously understood in two different ways. It seems to an onlooker that the person has committed a transgression, and this may in turn be a desecration of Hashem's name. And an onlooker may see this action mistakenly conclude that it's permitted to do something which is actually forbidden. Hinei amina lei ezeu shanim shehuva kli anal lekilasa. It's been a few years since an umbrella was brought to his kehillah. The Noida Yehuda lived 1780 in Prague. So it looks like the new invention of umbrella came to Kal, and it came to Prague at his time. And many in the community were using it. And people started using it on Shabbos. I protested. The Derashti also palm Knesset. He gave a Shabbos drasha. We were in the shul of the Noid Yehuda. Shu Isser Gomer. The Amarti Shafil Choshan Isser Skila. That it could be an Isser Deraisa. Me'az ve'adata animocha biklasin Avram av Nizarim. He says he warns the people, and most of the community does not use it. Of course, the footnote points out that we wouldn't put someone to death unless they did it b'mezid. They were warned with two edim, and the two edim saw them do it. Derech klal kashu mu'arachmer of Shabbos. He says, even you opened up the umbrella from Friday, yesh bo lodin le'isr leheter. Then you could have a discussion. Maybe it would be permitted. Aval kolponim mivnei marisayin yesh la'asro. Ki mi yodeya imer charbet mesbol. Who knows that it was set up? Now, the Chassam Sofer in Pressburg, not far from Prague, disagrees and thinks that an umbrella should be permissible on Shabbos. So we're reading the two lions of the Achronim, right? Of the later Achronim. Of course, our generation, we have Rav Moshe, but of the later Achronim, you have the Noid Yehuda and the Chassam Sofer. They're probably the most important of the later Achronim. And they have a debate. The Chassam Sofer was after the Noid Yehuda, 1820, 1830. Mashakos of Oidus HaMitriya, who discussed the umbrella. The Noid Yehuda was concerned, even for a chatas. He did a thorough analysis. He says, you're not going to be a chassid if you're not going to be called a chassid if you carry an umbrella. Somebody who is careful in shmir some mitzvahs and wants to protect his soul should stay away from it. He doesn't think that it's correct the way the Noid Yehuda thought. First of all, he says, anything that wasn't comparable in the Mishkan, you don't have at least skila liability for. Zeh Loshen Yerushalmi, Sof Per Klal Gadol. Ma binyanei b'Mishkan, and what was the related building in the Mishkan that we don't build? They, remember, there were sockets on the floor, and they stuck the boards into the socket. That was binyan. Uparech. The lavla shah, yeah, but the Mishkan was just temporary. But when they camped and they moved when Hashem told them it's Kemisha Yicholim La'olam. When they built the Mishkan, it was as if the Mishkan was built forever. Rav Yossi bar Rav Bon, Kivan Shivtichen HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lachnisim La'aretz. Since HaKadosh Baruch Hu had promised Klal Yisrael to bring them into Eretz Yisrael, then Kimoshu L'Shah, so that really the Mishkan was temporary. Hada Amra, and then therefore putting these boards together, Binyan L'Shah's Binyan. That's considered a real binyan. Hada Amra, Minatzad binyan, that even side to side and putting it into a socket, not on the ground. Hada Amra, Afilu Nasal Davar Acher. Sam Sofer writes, I'm reading footnote 16. So someone writes that the Notre Dame raised the possibility that opening an umbrella may incur liability for a sin offering. But in our citation of the Notre Dame, he refers to liability for stoning. Because both liabilities reflect the guilt of having committed malach b'deraisa, it makes no difference which liability is mentioned. Neither actual liability is observed today. We don't bring a chatas, we don't stone anybody. Both poskim mention liability merely to demonstrate that using a malacha may constitute a true malacha. Back to the Chassam Sofer. Hada Am, he's quoting the Yerushalmi. Hada Amru binyan al gabi kelim. And when you stick a board into a socket, is that when you use kalim, is that considered binyan? The dachi, binyan adonim kekarkadami. No, the sockets are like the ground. Upasa kena Rambam, Perak Yud, the binyan gabi kalim lav binyanu. Binyan in a kli, putting a board in a socket is not. Unfortunately, Rav Magid, the lodami lemishkan adonim kekarkadami was not. So, but the mishkan was because the sockets were like the ground. From all of this, Yerushalmi, says the Chazon Ish, says the Chassam Sofer. L'madati me'Yerushalmi hazeh shloish tamim shlo yeh b'mitri hashum nidnud isur min haTorah kol panim. He says from this Yerushalmi, I don't see any isur min haTorah from an umbrella. Chada dahavi lebinyan l'shot. Number one, certainly an umbrella is temporary. Beis v'lometzina kiyotzu b'zeh b'migdash. We don't see anything in the Mishkan where somebody built a canopy that he carried and he went with him by himself. Building midaraisa is when the walls reach the ground. Fine, says the Chassam Sofer. We've got to the point where we don't think there's any Isser Deraisa. So he says, I don't think there's even a rabbinic Isser. He says it's close to say that we permitted. He says you can have a goy open it for you. You don't have to create World War III over that. Now, I'm going to stop here. It's like the perils of Pauline, because it's like right in the middle, but we will see what the Bir Allah of the Chafetz Chaim says, and we'll see what the Chazon Ish says, and some of the later Achronim say.
Yesterday, and it's amazing how this works, but yesterday in Mark's Shir, he talked about this very issue. He talked about the machlokes between the Chassam Sofer and the Noda B'Yehuda and also the Chazon Ish. He also said that, I think he said there was in Pressport, but I'm not sure. But in this place, the custom was that people would carry umbrellas. So they have an Erev. They would carry umbrellas on Shabbos, and it would be a guy who would put the umbrella together. And if it was still raining when they left the shul, the guy would open them up again. That's the way they did it.
First of all, I think we just saw it. Hang on.
Yeah, he just said that the Sofa says with a guy you can do it. It was actually the way they did it. They would have a guy stationed in the shul because I guess it was heavy rains, and that was his job. he would open the umbrella and close the umbrella for everyone. I guess nobody had to say anything. He knew to do, but that's what he mentioned yesterday, which is very interesting.
Mhm.
Less than 24 hours ago.
We were in Pressburg a year ago. No, a year and a, about what is it? About a year and a half ago. The year before we went to the south of France, we went to Central Europe, and Pressburg's a beautiful, beautiful
Yeah, I
town.
mean, we were there with you.
Oh, you were there with us, Yaakov, right?
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
You were in
So that was
Budapest
very-
and Vienna. Yeah.
That's right. In Prague.
Pressburg was beautiful. Remember, we
Yeah.
walked at night, people in the
Yeah.
street. It was a beautiful town.
Yeah. So anyway,
Okay.
that's what they did.
So let's gather next week, 7 o'clock. Everyone have a,
8 o'clock.
I'm sorry, 8 o'clock next week. Everyone have a wonderful Shabbos.
You too. Be well. Thank
Be
you.
well.
Good night.
Shkoyach, Ernie.
Be well.